We're going to move on. Next bill will be Representative Knight, 5059. It's an act relating to waters and navigation, Bristol County Water Supply. This act would delete a portion of the enabling statute for the Bristol County Water Authority. Representative Jason Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. So without the background, these two bills caught a lot of people by surprise because it deletes big sections of the enabling statute for the Bristol County Water Authority. However, if you live in the East Bay, specifically the communities that are served by the Bristol County Water Authority, this is one piece in a long, long road towards improving the county's operations and quality of its water supply. When the Bristol County Water Authority was first established, it was tasked with providing water to Bristol County from two sources, a primary source and a backup source. The primary source is the Providence Water Authority through pipes underneath Narragansett Bay. But the backup source was two reservoirs that sit on the Massachusetts line in Seekonk and Swansea. Is it Swansea? Yeah. It's the upper Camus reservoir and the lower. Those two water sources are not viable anymore. They've become stagnant. They're choked with biological material. There's a couple of dams there and a fish ladder that all that stuff doesn't work anymore, and the water's not good. So the Bristol County Water Authority is taking steps actually with DEM to remove the dams and restore those reservoirs back to their natural state. We want to make changes in the enabling statute to sort of match up the law with what Bristol County currently is doing. The backup water source is going to be, when they finish it, a pipeline down from Pawtucket through East Providence into the East Bay. But right now, this statute calls for them to maintain a water supply that doesn't exist anymore. So we're making the statute match up with reality. In your documentation, you should find letters of support and resolutions from the Bristol County Water Authority, as well as I know Save the Bay is going to get online. They're supportive as well. Happy to take any questions. Oh, and I will just take this opportunity, since I have the mic and the TV, just to say this, and I think I can speak for Representative Speakman as well. Bristol County Water Authority is moving heaven and earth to provide safe and fresh water to Bristol County, and it is entirely on the backs of the ratepayers of those communities. Water is something that we should think about on a statewide level, and I would strongly encourage you all to support a water bond when we get something drafted and get something out there for the voters, hopefully in the near future, so that we can have some central planning around water, quality water, and be able to leverage the state's borrowing capacity to improve our water supplies for our citizens. Thanks.
Representative Knight, for the sake of continuity and time, if you want to run anything on 5060, they're pretty much related.
Exactly. 5059 and 5060 have the same purpose. They just delete different sections of the statute.
Great. Okay. I just wanted to say that for the record. Any questions? Representative Carson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have a question for the sponsor.
Yes.
Could you, I'm reading these bills and I'm seeing what's being omitted and I don't understand it. So can you say can you briefly tell us what the long-term plan is of the Bristol Water Authority? Where are they trying to go?
Here's where they're trying to go. The East Bay currently gets water from the Providence Water Supply through a pipe underneath the bay. If I go home today and pour a glass of water from the tap, that's where it's coming from. They are building a pipeline down from another water source in Pawtucket. I don't know exactly sort of where the rivers come from up north, but there's an independent water source up in Pawtucket, independent from the Providence Water Supply. So those are going to be the two water sources, the main and the backup, when we're done with this project. In the past, the backup water supply was this reservoir, which doesn't work anymore. And so we are, Bristol County is in the process of taking down the dams and draining those reservoirs, returning them to their natural state, and they want to make the statute match up with where they are now.
Well,
Particularly, there's a couple things in here, like for instance, in 5059, we're deleting a section that says the state is mandated to upgrade the current Bristol County water system of reservoirs, wells, treatment, all that. That would have been great if it happened, but this law was enacted back in the 90s, and the state never followed through with that. They never did it. Right? So there's a water supply out there that the state was supposed to provide funds to maintain. That's these reservoirs. State never did it, and Bristol County's been wringing its hands ever since. So now they cut bait a couple of years back, and now we're trying to move on.
Thank you. Representative O'Brien, you have a question?
No, Chairman. I would like to be recorded in the affirmative for holding all bills for forever study, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for reminding me. Lou, you got that? Any further questions? Representative McLaughlin.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. A question for Rep. Knight. Is the East Bay currently aware they have a problem with the pipe you mentioned, going across the bay to East Providence?
Yes, we sprung in the main water supply. We sprung a leak. When was that? It was about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the Water Authority brought in a crew, and they had to sleeve the pipe from the inside, and it cost a whole bunch of money. And the communities that are served by the Water Authority are well aware of the problem with that pipe and the efforts that we had to do to repair it, which is why we need to get a secondary source installed as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That concludes the testimony for, oh wait, I'm sorry. Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 4 people testifying, all in favor of the bill. We have 2 from the Bristol County Water Authority and 2 from Save the Bay. First one up is going to be Pamela Marchand, who is from the Bristol County Water Authority. Can we bring Pamela up, please?
Ms. Marchand.
Yes.
This is Representative David Bennett from the Environmental Committee on Natural Resources. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I have to turn you down. I'm getting an echo. But thank you, Chairman Bennett and committee members for hearing these bills. And I really want to thank Representative Knight for giving such an excellent explanation of what we're trying to do. The Bristol County Water Act was developed, as Representative Knight mentioned, in the early 90s, back when Bristol County was looking to find a second source of supply. They were having extreme difficulty with the existing supply, which are coming from Massachusetts into the Camus Reservoir. The supplies were not sufficient. There were severe restrictions on water use, and the water quality was fairly poor and very difficult to treat. The existing treatment plant was built in 1908 and definitely not developed for the stringent standards that came into effect in the late 1980s. So going to Providence was the best idea they could come up with. It required building a pipeline under the bay through a rock tunnel. And as Representative Knight mentioned, that pipeline was a steel line. It was completed in 1998, and it sprung a leak about halfway under the river. And there was no way to access that leak, so we ended up lining it with another pipe and pulled another pipe the entire distance, which is almost a mile, under the river. So we were in the process of actually looking to go to Pawtucket for our secondary supply. It was the most reasonable way to go, rather than trying to work with the existing supplies, which were in the Act when the when the Bristol County Water Act was developed, it was really developed to assist Bristol County with the pipeline to Providence. But included in the act were a couple sections that required Bristol County to maintain the existing sources of supply, just because it was thought that they should be held on to. Unfortunately, Bristol County did not own any of those supplies. These headwaters are located in Massachusetts, which it does control all the water, and did not own any of the property, but we owned the dams, which includes all the liabilities. So when we went to build the pipeline, we wanted to disengage the use of the existing supplies, but with the state requirement to keep those maintained, we were not able to do that at the time. And we did maintain those up until recent years. But part of the act was the fact that Bristol County was not supposed to pay for any upgrades that were required to keep those supplies in operation. That was the requirement by the state and through the Water Resource Board. I did say the board did put up a little bit of money in the beginning to do some improvements to the treatment plant, but after that, any significant improvements were paid for by Bristol County. And meanwhile, those sources have continued to degrade just because of water quality conditions and age, and they were no longer useful. Especially our treatment plant was finally shut down in 2011. We were using it somewhat for backup just in case of an emergency, but it is no longer functional. So those supplies are in deteriorating condition, and we would like to change our Bristol County Water Act, and it's just the two sections, section 5.6 and 5.2, that would eliminate the requirement to maintain those supplies. 5.2 is, Representative Knight mentioned, is just the requirement that the state pay to maintain those supplies, which it has not done in the past. But, so what we're looking for is just those changes in the act, and what we would like to do is to move forward with removing the dams, especially on the Camus Reservoir. We have a lot of support from the state agencies and the environmental community because the lower dam is being overtopped during moon-high tides and storm events with salt water. And the reservoir is definitely changing and the water quality is degrading because the two dams are not allowing flow through that system. It's a very shallow reservoir. It gets lots of algae and lots of nutrient growth in it, and it's using up the oxygen in the summertime. So we are seeing the fish disappearing, and we are seeing the plant life changing, and it's causing some issues in the area. And what we would like to do is simply open that up for flow. It would change it back to what it used to be, which was a saltwater estuary, and we would have flushing throughout the system. It would bring in more species of fish, wildlife, and plant life, and it would rehabilitate that area. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Ms. Marchand, did your testimony include 5059 and 5060 of Representative Knight's?
Yes, it did. 5060 represents section 5.6, which we are asking to strike in its entirety, which is strictly references those supplies from Massachusetts into the Camus.
Okay, thank you.
5059 references the state mandate for the Water Resource Board to pay for the upgrade of those supplies.
Thank you, Ms. Marchand. Representative McLaughlin has a question for you.
Sure.
Yes, Ms. Marchand, in reference to the upgrades and everything that's been done, is there any type of financial impact with surrounding communities like East Providence?
Not as far as those upgrades were only strictly supplied the Bristol County Water Authority. What we're looking to do with the pipeline to Pawtucket is to include the city of East Providence. They also have pipelines that are on the bottom of the river that go to Providence, and theirs are quite a bit older. They were put in the early 1960s. So they are also concerned with a secondary source and would like to join us with the project to Pawtucket. The main issue, as Chairman Knight again mentioned, is the fact of funding. It's a very expensive project for both utilities to undertake.
So it's my understanding, in reference to the financial impact of the communities, the taxpayers, because water has become a very expensive commodity, you know?
Oh, it's definitely becoming more so because most of our infrastructure dates back from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and Bristol County has had an aggressive plan of replacing and relining pipelines throughout the system, as well as improving pressure districts with building pump stations and renovating sections of the system that were in poorer condition. And our biggest issue right now is supply, though.
Supply.
As Representative Knight mentioned, we had a leak on that, our only supply now.
Exactly.
Which comes from Providence. So we have to go to an alternate supply.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Marchand? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Marchand. This is Rep. Bennett again. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Good night. Next.
Our next person to testify is Topher Hamlet from Save the Bay. If we can get Topher up there. And Topher, if you're listening, can you please... Topher, can you talk on H5059 and H5060, please, at the same time?
Okay.
Mr. Toka, this is Representative David Bennett. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rep. Bennett. This is Topher Hamlet of Save the Bay.
How you doing? Did you hear what Representative Phillips said? We're doing both bills together, 5059 and 5060.
Yes, I did.
Okay, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And thank you, Representative Knight, for introducing these bills. In addition to being Director of Advocacy for Save the Bay, I'm also an East Bay resident and a Bristol County Water Authority customer. Save the Bay supports these bills to remove the requirement for the BCWA to maintain its former backup water supply in the Kickamuit-Palmer River watersheds. The old backup system that Pam Marchand's been talking about includes two dams that are in disrepair and of no use to the authority. And in fact, those dams are harming the Kickamuit River watershed. They're causing impairment of water quality and degradation of habitats. Representative Knight's legislation would clear obsolete statutory barriers to addressing these problems. And to be a little more specific about it, the removal of the upper and lower dams will increase the ecological resiliency of the Kickamuit River watershed by restoring a tidal estuary, increasing both salt marsh and freshwater wetland habitat. It will improve fish passage, and it will also restore the connectivity of this tributary with the estuary above it. So the dam removals will actually create a tidal estuary habitat for a wide variety of fish and wildlife. And these very important ecological benefits will also open up new outdoor recreational opportunities for East Bay residents and visitors and eco-businesses. So by removing dams, as well as raising roads and resizing culverts, the Bristol County Water Authority will jumpstart a great climate adaptation project that will also help BCWA and the town of Warren address chronic and growing flood management challenges. Save the Bay has been collaborating with the BCWA and other project partners, including NOAA's Restoration Center, the town of Warren, and the state's chief resiliency officer on the project planning and design, and also trying to secure funds for project design and construction. So we support this legislation because it removes a now outdated requirement for the authority to maintain its former backup water supply so that the community and ecological resiliency benefits can be realized from removing these upper and lower impoundments. So we are strongly supportive of the legislation, thank Representative Knight for introducing it, and we look forward to its passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toker. Any questions for Mr. Toker? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Toker. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, Chairman.
Our next person to testify is Wenley Ferguson, also from Save the Bay.
Ms. Ferguson. Is it Mr. Ferguson?
Ferguson, yeah.
Hi, this is Chairman David Bennett. Can you hear me? Hello? Ms. Ferguson? Is it Miss or Miss?
Yes.
Hi, this is Representative Bennett from Environment and Natural Resources. We're going to be testifying on both of Representative Knight's bills, 5059 and 5060. You have the floor.
Thank you, Representative Bennett. I'm just following up with the comments that Topher Hamlet, the Director of Policy, provided to you all. I have been personally working, I'm the head of restoration efforts at Save the Bay, and I've been working with Pamela Marchand and her team for the last 5 years on the restoration of the Camus River and looking at proactive dam removal of the upper Camus River and now the lower Camus River. And just to add a little bit to what Topher's testimony and Pam's very comprehensive testimony provided, what is very interesting about this site, the lower impoundment, which creates the reservoir system, is now a brackish system. So it's already converting to a tidal estuary, even without the dam being removed. And that is due to sea level rise. And we are seeing now, yesterday I was down along the dam with Pam's staff, and the tide was flowing into the reservoir. So this summer we monitored the reservoir with Bristol County Water through URI's Watershed Watch program, and we documented salt brackish conditions and the lower impoundment, and even during the drought we documented salinity levels, low salinity levels in the upper impoundment. So even without removing the lower dam, it's already converting to a brackish system because of climate change and sea level rise. So the proactive efforts by Bristol County Water to remove the upper impoundment and remove the lower impoundment will restore the estuary and improve flood storage capacity. So as Topher mentioned, we're going to improve not only ecological resiliency, but increase community resiliency. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Any questions for Ms. Ferguson? Thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson. You have a splendid night.
Thank you.
Okay. Next.
And Chairman, the last person that's going to testify on these two bills is Alan Klepper from Bristol County Water Authority.
What's the last name?
Klepper.
Klepper? Hi, Mr. Klepper. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. This is Representative Bennett from the Environment and Natural Resources. How you doing?
Thank you very much for allowing me to testify.
Okay, we're going to be testifying on both bills, 5059 and 5060. The floor
Yes,
is
sir.
yours.
My thanks to Rep. Knight for his introducing this bill and to the excellent presentation that he's made about the difficulties that we face at the authority, as well as Pam's excellent explanation of why we are trying to remove this housekeeping activity to get it off our backs. There's nothing I can say other than to thank everyone for hearing this bill. Thanks for it being placed. We want you to know that as chairman of the board of directors of the authority, I'm happy to say that the board stands unanimously behind the approval and of the committee and the ultimate passage of these necessary housekeeping bills. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, Representative Carlson. Oh, okay. Representative Speakman.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Director Klepper.
Hi, June.
We've been working on this for a very long time. I just have to tell you, I want to thank you on behalf of the residents of the East Bay for working on this so diligently and for finally taking one more step towards completing this project, or completing the old project and beginning the new project. When I was on the Barrington Town Council, we started this work, and Director Klepper has been there all along. So thank you, Alan, for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Representative Carlson has a comment.
I have a general comment here. It strikes me that there are some water management and technical and engineering obstacles that need to be overcome. But I would like to draw the committee's attention to the fact that climate change is threatening water supply, and that is what they have said. I mean, I know that there's a lot of questions about what climate change does, and here we have a situation where there's some documentation that it's threatening inland water resources and reservoirs. So it's not only heat, it's not only sea rise, it's also the water we drink. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. Klepper, thank you very much for your testimony. You have a great night.
Same to you. You're quite welcome.
Bye-bye. Any other questions about the bill? Representative Speakman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've said, I've been working on this for a very long time, and Rep. Knight and I have been thinking about how best to approach this for a really long time. So I'm in strong support of these changes. They've been causing significant discussion, I guess, in the three communities served by BCWA, and it's great to have this housekeeping concluded so that we can move on to the next phase of the dam removal and of the building the alternative supply to through East Providence to Pawtucket. And as Rep. Knight said, we need to think more, not globally, but statewide, about how to provide safe, consistent drinking water supply for everyone in Rhode Island. I know in Newport you've got that little hill that separates the ocean from people's drinking water, so it really does require, and I hope maybe on this committee we can make some progress on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's great to see our state moving forward on a lot of these projects. Any other comments or questions? That concludes the hearings on 5059 and 5060.